This week on World Stories. A helping hand for North Koreans arriving in the South. Local militias in Nigeria help in the fight against terror. But first to Germany, where countless Jewish families lost everything before being murdered by the Nazi government. Even today, traces of this brutal past can still be found. We visited an apartment in Berlin.
Marking the anniversary of the war's end, some Berliners threw open their apartment doors, allowing visitors in to see where victims of the Nazis once lived, most of whom were Jewish.
A family called Katzenellenbogen lived here in this apartment from 1933 to 1939. Yeah? They were a fairly middle-class family. They owned several shops. Their shops were confiscated. There's one document shows how the Mr. Katzenellenbogen had to flee out the back door of his shop in order to survive being captured by the Gestapo.
The Katzenellenbogens fled Germany for Argentina, where they fell into poverty. Hugh Williamson is one of the Berliners who took part in the commemorative event.
We understand the history of this, of our apartment, of our house better, and I suppose it brings to life what Berlin must have been like at the time in the 1930s, the dramatic times that the family has lived through.
On display were the family's personal items. They traced the escape of the Katzenellenbogens, a ticket from their ship to Argentina, and paperwork from the Nazi bureaucracy. A tax bill they received for leaving the country was shocking. These people had to pay to leave the country and flee persecution, and the tax was high. 2 flights up, another home, another dramatic story. This was a so-called Jew apartment. The Nazis crammed 9 people into these rooms before sending them off to death camps. I find it very moving to spend some time in these rooms where people lived before they were deported. Its owner, Marie Rolshoven, initiated the Open Homes project in Berlin last year after seeing a similar event in Amsterdam. There's an element of hospitality to it. You come into contact with people in a very different way. I've spoken to lots of people here who I'd seen on the street before, but who otherwise would never have come into my apartment. These homes are providing a place to connect with people from the past.
Refugees fleeing North Korea often have a hard time getting used to life in the South, and many are traumatized. One Christian organization is doing what it can to help.
They might not show it, but many people here have lived through a nightmare. Most worshippers at this service outside of Seoul are originally from North Korea. Defectors, as they're called, who have risked their lives to flee hardship and repression. Reverend Chun, a former businessman turned pastor, has made it his mission in life to help North Koreans escape. His organization also aims to help North Koreans once they reach South Korea. Many of the community members here are minors, like Cho Won-hyuk. Once Cho Won-hyuk reached the South, everything was new to him. It was not at all what he had expected. When we arrived, it felt really amazing. We moved into an apartment. I didn't even know what that was. I'd never seen an apartment before. I didn't know a lot of things, and the food also tasted strange. All I knew about South Korea was from North Korean books. There, the South is described as very poor, so we give them rice to survive. Reverend Chun knows how hard it is for many North Koreans to fit in when they first arrive. In the North Korean system, people monitor one another. One spies on the other. And because they are so used to keeping an eye on each other, they don't trust relationships. Even after coming here, North Koreans wouldn't trust what South Koreans say. And even at the church, they don't trust people. This is the most difficult part. It's hard for North Koreans to build that trust, and that's why their relationships with people here often fall apart. In Reverend Chun's community, North and South Koreans can get to know each other. It's the best way to overcome the prejudices that have been fostered by political interests on both sides, by the North and the South. When I was in elementary school, we were taught that North Koreans are bad. And if we see a suspicious person from the North, we need to report them to the police. That's what we were told as kids, so we didn't really think of North Koreans as humans. Times have changed, at least in the South. And Cho Won-hyuk feels safe in this community, but he also misses home.
The Nigerian army has recently made significant progress in the fight against the Islamic terrorists of Boko Haram, and the army has important allies in its battle, local militias.
Today is 11.
A few more signatures, and then the hard part of Lawan Wasaram's day will begin. Wasaram is not only the head of a rural district in northeast Nigeria, he's also the head of a local militia. Wasaram and his team are in uniform and heading to a checkpoint on the road leading into town. They say they can spot dangers faster than the military because they know which people live here and which ones pose potential threats. But it's dangerous work. 2 of his men were killed when terrorists detonated a bomb at a checkpoint.
They may come in with the dangerous weapons. They may come in with the bombs or other things, whereby it can harm people. That's why we are checking whatever vehicles is coming in, whoever he is, we are going to check it before going into the town.
In 2013, this area was overrun by Boko Haram. Even the military and the militias fled. More than 150 people lost their lives. Still, Wasaram is proud that he was able to kill a Boko Haram fighter while fleeing. Today, the area is once again under government control. Alhaji Mustapha, a farmer, is one of those who've returned. He had to get by for a long time as a refugee in the state capital, Maiduguri, without an income or job. Now, for the first time in years, he's getting his fields ready for the coming season. He wants to plant beans, peanuts, and corn here. We're glad that we can get back to it now because it's peaceful again. This is our only option. Now we're waiting for rain.
I appreciate it, and I'm impressed of the coming and returning, preparing for the farming.
Back in his office, Wasaram is working on improving the region's economy, trying to attract more government assistance for the farmers. But most of all, he wants to be a role model for what hard work can accomplish.
We are not going to depend ourselves with the NGOs. We are not going to depend with someone, because if we are watching someone, what we like, we are not going to get it. So what do we going to do? Do we going to put our hands to our knee? No.
Wasaram and his militia are determined. They are going to keep putting on their uniforms after work until the last of the refugees come back and establish a safe new life in their home here.
Our last report is from Portugal, where it's a big weekend for the pilgrimage site of Fatima. The visit by Pope Francis underlines the enduring popularity of the town with Catholics, and business is booming.
Last year, 7 million people came to this Portuguese town from all over the world. They wanted to see for themselves where shepherd children apparently saw the Virgin Mary. It's also lucrative for the church, which funds the venue from donations.
The Sanctuary of Fatima's accounts are carefully kept, of course.
They're also subject to outside auditing. But we don't publish our figures. We present them only to the Portuguese Council of Bishops. The only thing that's known is that most of the money remains in Fatima. But preparations for the Pope's visit and the access roads have to be paid for by the municipal authorities. Portugal is one of many countries which don't tax churches, much to the dismay of Fatima's mayor. For our community, that means going without important revenues, which we're actually entitled to. But we're still expected to make sure water flows through the pipes, that roads are maintained, the garbage disposed of, and so on. Paulo Fonseca is happy to name numbers, and they're impressive. Let's just assume that visitors spend an average €50 each. That would be around 350 million euros. 350 million euros is a lot of money for the region. Not much of it seems to filter through to the people who work here, though. The Hotel and Restaurant Workers Union bemoans church employment practices. This man hasn't had any holiday for years, and other conditions don't sound very Christian either. The biggest problem is excessive working hours, 17 to 18 hours a day, and then they only get the minimum monthly wage of €557. The miracle of Fatima has always been commingled with money. The first souvenir stalls appeared here 100 years ago, straight after Maria was said to have put in her appearance.